We're here. Oh, we've been here, though.
Okay. Did I hear new people come on, though?
I heard something ding, but I don't see any new names besides Mary, myself, and Michelle.
Okay. Let's give them 2 or 3 more minutes, and then we'll go ahead and get started.
Hey, Lauren, you might want to send emails, like clarifying the time or something, because it is kind of confusing. I know it's silly, but
It's that Arizona Mountain Standard Time thing.
We come work it.
I know it.
Lauren emailed me a little while ago to see if I'd done my thing yet. Where is this coming from?
Well, this came from Baja Fresh. That came from across the street.
I think David just sent an email to get it in the Walnut room, Walnut building, which isn't right. So I'm there. The other Walnut building. The other Walnut.
Isn't that one your building?
Yes,
But
I
it's
came here instead.
Oh.
I think he was smarter, I guess. I think he's smarter. I came straight here instead. Getting my lunch over there. I passed you driving on the road on Park Center on Saturday at 2 in the afternoon. No.
I was
Sunday at 11 in the morning. That's right.
I was taking my dogs to do a bath, I think. Saturday or Sunday? Sunday, yeah.
Hi, Andrea.
Hey, Andrea, are you on?
Yes.
Hi, how you doing? It's Alicia.
Hi.
You're on speakerphone, so don't say too much.
Okay.
You can say whatever you want.
All right.
Things going good in Oklahoma?
They're going okay. Although apparently I can't convert Central Time to Mountain Time and figure out Daylight Savings Time and.
You're not the only one. We've been here for an hour.
Aww.
We were ready. My God. And now we're up to 9 other people besides myself, Lauren.
Okay, that sounds great.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Well, you know, at the risk of leaving others behind, let's go ahead and get started, and we'll catch them up as they come on or as they figure out daylight savings time. Last time, what we did is we had everybody mute their mics, and I got the sense that really impeded conversation. So if you could go ahead and turn your mics on. Last time we talked, it was much too close to a lecture rather than a dialogue that I was hoping. But this month, what we've got here is talking about different kinds of people and other things that Gwen Stefani got right. And that is Mountain Standard Time there. I apologize for not conforming to the rest of the world. But just to give you a quick background of where we're going with this study is, we kind of talked about this last time, that today people perceive and interact with wildlife very differently than they have in the past couple decades. You know, the top picture there is more representative of decades past, and then the picture down below is more representative of what's going on right now, where people are wanting to just view wildlife. They want to do it in a more controlled setting, and they want that emotional connection rather than the meat on the table. To give you an idea of what we're looking at here in Arizona, you know, over the past 2 decades, our hunting population has gone from 15% down to about 7 or 8. Our fishing population, we've gone from 1 in 3 Arizonans fishing to about 1 in 6 Arizonans fishing. But on the flip side, our watchable wildlife, or our wildlife viewing patterns, have increasingly gotten bigger, and they've gotten bigger as our state has increased in number. Part of this study, we kind of looked at the participation of folks, where we asked, did you participate in the following activity of frequently, sometimes, rarely, or never. That dark blue is I've never participated in this activity. So our hunting down here, we've got 3/4 of Arizonans who have never participated in hunting. We also have over 50% who have never been fishing. And, you know, those are, in times past, have kind of been our bread and butter. But when you start to look at wildlife viewing, you begin to see that there's only about 1 in 3 that have not participated in wildlife viewing. The other portion of this study, we were very interested in just those folks who have not participated before. And of those folks, we asked, what's your level of interest? What kind of things are you looking for? And of those people who have never participated in those activities, you've got some people who represent a latent demand. For example, with hunting, of those 3/4 of Arizonans who have never been hunting, you know, over 50% of Arizonans simply aren't interested, don't want to participate, have no interest in participating. But the lighter blue represents the latent demand. And the larger that these lighter blue segments get represents the larger latent demand that we have. Now, we have a pretty good latent demand here with fishing, but we also have a very good latent demand here with wildlife viewing. And when you begin to look at the overlap of participants, these folks right here in the middle are individuals who participate in all 3 activities. And these are folks who only participate in wildlife viewing. And, you know, those are to scale. And so what that represents is Arizona has a very large portion of folks out there who are wanting to view wildlife, but maybe not necessarily have participated in hunting and fishing. And that kind of sets the background for the study that I wanted to talk about today, where we really investigated wildlife viewing in Arizona. And we took a two-pronged approach. We did first a cluster analysis, and then we did a contingent valuation. And first I want to talk about the cluster analysis, but just a quick recap for all the non-Bruce Ackermans out there. What a cluster analysis is it basically takes a cloud of data. And right now I'm showing you 2 variables. But what it does is it investigates characteristics of those data. For example, here you can see a big difference between the red dots and the blue dots. And what it does is it rotates that data cloud around and reorients the axis. So when you begin to look at those clusters, they all kind of form into their own populations. Now, I've shown you this in 2 dimensions with 2 variables. And we did this, I believe it was on 28 variables of a wildlife viewer and what they would like out of the experience. And what we found is there are basically 5 groupings of wildlife viewers. And treating wildlife viewers as one monolithic group isn't very advantageous to us. But if we can begin to look at different types of viewers, we can begin to really hone in on how to approach these folks and how to integrate them into our active constituency. And the first group of that is our dedicated viewers who are motivated by observing and connecting with nature. And when asked what kind of barriers these folks had, there essentially were none. These are the folks who are going to overcome the lack of time, lack of money, those kinds of things. And they're the folks who also prefer the rugged conditions with little evidence of human traffic or human presence. And coincidentally, they're the ones that are willing to pay more for different kinds of activities. And then you have the group that I'm going to call the wanderers. They're the ones who are looking to do something new, gain solitude, and be able to relax in nature. But these folks, more than any other group, are really restricted by the financial barrier of getting out there. And now, just like with the dedicated folks, they also seek areas where there's little evidence of humans. But these guys, they're looking to teach others and kind of bring other folks into the fold. But they're really not interested in getting directions. They just want somebody to point them in the right direction and then let them explore it. Now you have the generalists who are almost a 180 of the previous group, where they actively seek out directions. They need maps, they need GPS waypoints. They're looking to relax in nature, but they're looking to do it in a larger family group. And they want more groomed trails, they want developed restrooms and things like that. Now, these folks, they're okay with the larger groups, but the social aspect isn't what's motivating them to get out there. What's really motivating them to get out there is that novelty and relaxing in nature. And then finally, you have the occasionalist group. And these folks, their motivation for getting out there is finding some education, spending time with family and their kids. And their major barrier is the lack of knowledge, which kind of, I mean, that seems like a no-brainer. And they'd like facilities that are very well developed. They'd like trails, tables, signage. I mean, some even prefer an RV hookup if it's possible. Now, for these folks, because they are a little bit more distanced from nature, for them seeing a mule deer or a white-tailed deer, it has the same appeal as something very, very rare, because to them, seeing that deer is something rare to them. The other flip side of that is these folks, the benefits of wildlife viewing are easily substituted by other activities, such as the pink Jeep tour that we've got going on here in Sedona. And how those groups are made up of in Arizona, we have our dedicated folks and our wanderers and our generalists and then our occasionalists, but we also have this group over here who are kind of the non-interested folks who will do it but want to do it from their backyard or park or something like that. Now, the other way that we approach this is through a conjoint analysis approach. And And what we're looking to do there is figure out what it is that different activities draw folks to participate in those activities. And in order to do that, we asked folks a couple questions. We said, how much would you be willing to pay per person for each of the following activities? And then we asked about capturing bighorn sheep and moving them, basically helping out with a reintroduction or a translocation. Then we also asked about learning about black-footed ferrets and spotlighting for them. And what we found for these two specific questions is we gave each person a price range and asked them to say, which price range do you think you would fall into? And so for the bighorn sheep, the majority of folks fell within the 0 category, or I wouldn't pay anything for that activity. These are your folks who just simply aren't interested in going. But then you have a pretty good spread of folks who are willing to pay the 5 to 10 price point all the way through the 30 to 40 price point, and even over $40 to be able to participate in that activity. Now on the flip side, you've got going out and spotlighting ferrets. There's a larger amount of people who aren't willing to pay money for those activities. But it seems like with the ferrets, there's a smaller percentage that are willing to pay that top dollar. Now, I could show you this in tabular format, but I hate tables. And so I'm going to try to represent these visually by giving you the level of interest as represented by the average amount people are willing to pay for those activities. And so you have here your bighorn relocation. And the average price people are willing to pay for that bighorn relocation is much higher. And you have more of a concentration down here of the ferrets, and therefore the ferrets are a little bit lower. In addition, this sphere is smaller, and so because it's smaller, that represents there's more consensus here. There's more agreement that paying for that activity should be at a lower price point. Whereas this one's a little bit larger, and so the folks that are willing to pay that are a little bit more spread out. So I'm going to get rid of the table entirely and begin talking about different activities that we propose to these folks and different activities that we do here in Arizona. You see that when you're doing a deer relocation, there's folks who are willing to pay a higher dollar amount for that, and there's people who are willing to pay a low, but there's very little consensus. When you do get into consensus is when you start talking about elk viewing and bird watching. That elk viewing, we see that there's a pretty good agreement that the value of an elk viewing trip should cost about $7.50 per person to be able to go to that. Now, thus far, you're probably wondering what it is that is on this x-axis. If the y-axis is the level of interest or money people are willing to pay, the x-axis are categories rather than a continuous variable, where here on the left-hand side are activities that are done with rare species, for example, bighorn, eagles, black-footed ferrets, and split up into further categories of a hands-on and a hands-off type of activity. And over here you've got your common species, again with your hands-on and hands-off activities. Now, up until now we've talked about just more charismatic species, but when you begin to get into the bats, the lizards, the fish, frogs, and things like that maybe aren't quite as sexy as some of the other species, you begin to notice some patterns here. When you begin looking at fish and bats and things like that, you'll notice that there's a general trend here where the charismatic species, generally you can charge more for those activities than you can with the uncharismatic species. Now there are some exceptions to that. The one exception is the spotlighting ferrets. I suspect that has to do with the general population of Arizonans not understanding what it actually means and what it took to be able to spotlight ferrets here in Arizona. And then the other exemption here is the javelina viewing, and that's because I underestimated the charismaticness of those pigs. Any of you guys that are Pulp Fiction fans know exactly what I'm talking about. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I probably can't endorse Pulp Fiction while I'm working as a Game and Fish employee. But great movie. Now the other thing that you've noticed too is when you start to group among rare and common species, there is a slight pattern there if you're kind of just doing the interocular analysis. Now when you look at involvement of a direct, more hands-on activity versus a hands-off activity, you can charge more for those hands-on activities. And that's because when you're doing a conjoint analysis, it's not the actual activity that is your independent variable. What is your independent variable is the factors associated with those activities. And so we have the charismatic is one independent variable, and you can see how we represented those charismatic species versus the uncharismatic species. Now, we also had rare versus common species, and you can see there in yellow how we distinguished them from common species. Sometimes when we had to put in qualifications like rare or endangered, rare again, and that's for folks who may not understand that those species are rare, and it helped us be able to distinguish those a little bit better. Now, when we did the direct, more hands-on things, we made sure that we had very specific phraseology as we presented these activities to make sure that people understood that they would actually be up close and personal with those. And then finally, we had a learning component, which I was unable to show just because I'm not able to model those in 3D. And learning came out to be one of the smaller effects there. And so when you begin to look at these, your regression pattern, when you begin to look at those independent variables, you can begin to see that the intercept, when you have an activity that is an uncharismatic species, a common species, a hands-off activity with no learning component. In this case, the frog calls is the activity that we are representing, that kind of thing. You can see that you can charge about $3.40 for it, and sure enough, the mean of that is right around $3.50 or so. Now, when you add in the charismatic species, you can add those two together, and that comes out to be, if you add these two betas together, that comes out to be about $7.50. And sure enough, both elk viewing and bird watching are both represented by those activities. I hate to be rude, but whoever's typing, if you could hold off on that, I'd really appreciate it. I can't hear or speak. So if you don't mind holding off on that, I'd really appreciate it. So when you begin to add in a direct experience, you can take these betas, the intercept, the charismatic, and the direct. If you add all those up, it comes out to be about $11, which the deer relocation, sure enough, comes out to be $11. And so on and so forth. And what you can do with this is you can take these 12 activities that we do, and yeah, we know what price point we can put these activities at. but that's really not all that valuable. We have many more than 12 activities that we do. But we can then take the characteristics of any future activities that we may have and plug it into this model and be able to create a price point to see approximately how much the market would bear. So as far as like management recommendations go, when states are trying to bring wildlife viewers into programs like the GAIN or the wildlife viewing stamp or activities like that, we really need to take advantage of some of these driving factors. Rarity, frankly, is not as important as biologists think. Just because we're tired of seeing deer doesn't mean that our general population is tired of seeing those things. Charisma is crucial because that affects the price point. And you can think of charisma as fur and feathers. And then if you can add on a hands-on interaction or some way to get folks involved, it greatly improves the value of that experience. And I show you this website from Game and Fish, not to be critical of ourselves, but kind of to demonstrate how biologists are approaching this. Here in this web page, we've got the sandhill cranes, and then on down we have Gila monsters, and then I think we have a devil's hole pupfish, which are extremely interesting to a biologist. They're just fascinating, but to the general population, they just don't hold a lot of interest to folks. And these are the pictures that we are giving to our public. Now, over here, where people can actually submit their own photos, we have picture after picture of people telling us what they want to see and what they find interesting. And you've got to scroll through. We've got bobcats, we've got bighorn sheep, we've got all sorts of charismatic species. And anytime there's an uncharismatic species, it's usually in the hands of somebody, meaning they had that direct hands-on experience that was memorable to them. And so, again, I don't mean to be critical of our program, but I do see this as a bit of a pattern that we as biologists tend to think what we find interesting is interesting to other people. But sure enough, here's a bobcat from a biology standpoint. Not all that terribly interesting, but sure enough, somebody thought it was good enough to post on the web for us. Another management recommendation is 3 out of 4 viewers go with family or friends. And so if we advertise this as being family friendly and plan activities that are family friendly, we'll have a much better chance at that. And when I say that, I mean price point breaks for families, because you know, as those family commitments become an impediment, selling this activity as a way to bond with your family in your ever-shrinking discretionary time is important. And then finally, when we begin talking about marketing, we need to reflect the motivations of the people we're talking to and not necessarily our motivations, namely learning alongside family and kids, connecting and relaxing in nature, and the novelty of something. And you know, one tagline that we've used that's very successful is come connect with nature alongside your kids. And that kind of hits 3 or 4 different motivations, and it seems to resonate with people, and we've seen some success with that one tagline. Now, as far as other applications, what we see as a potential way to continue this idea is begin an angler segmentation. Instead of viewing anglers as one monolithic group, begin recognizing that there are different anglers. Arizona has the goal of getting an angling opportunity within 30 minutes of every Arizonan. The problem with that is if you get the wrong activity or the wrong fishing experience within those 30 minutes, it doesn't really matter. For example, I have an urban lake about a half a mile from my home, and I can go and catch carp and 6-inch rainbow trout and fingerlings and all that kind of stuff. And you know, I've been to that lake about 3 times my whole time here in Arizona, just because that kind of fishing experience doesn't appeal to me. I'm looking more for the Lee's Ferry experience, where you fish for 3 days and you catch one monster and you go away happy. That kind of segmentation we need to recognize, and if there's any geospatial component to that, we need to modify our angling opportunities to be commensurate with the amount of angler types that are in those areas. We also have hunters styles. We all know that there's different types of hunters that exist there, not only by weapon type, but season, species, all that kind of thing. But at this point, I'd be more curious to open it up and see if anybody else has any ideas or areas they've been looking at, or areas where they might see this as being beneficial, and have more of a discussion rather than just listen to me talk here.
Hey, Lauren.
Yes?
In Nebraska, we are actually undergoing a really big communication audit, is what we're calling it. And we are looking at segmenting our public, whether they're users, hunters, anglers, park users, or general public, by what motivates them to do outdoor recreation. So we are looking, we're looking completely at motivations, not necessarily at whether they're a deer hunter versus a small game hunter. And we just got some results back from the quantitative study like 3 days ago, right, Jane? And so we're still kind of wading through the golden nuggets of information that we have from it. But it is pretty interesting. I think we found, I don't have the stuff in front of me, we found about maybe, is it 7 or 8? Maybe there's not that many.
There's 2 groups that we're heavily saturated in.
There's
2 that are really ideal. There's another one that's an ideal possibility, and 2 that aren't very interesting.
So there's like 7 or 8 segments that we found based on motivations. 2 of the segments are heavy to slightly heavy, moderately heavy users of our products at Game and Park. And the other 6 are potential, or there's no chance in heck we're ever going to have a chance of working with them, because they just don't really have the motivation to do things outdoors or to learn more about Nebraska. So we're finding some really interesting information, but we're looking at motivations.
That study sounds very interesting. Are you going to be ready to present that tomorrow?
Maybe not. But that's the first step in our quote-unquote audit. The next thing we're going to do is test some concepts out based on these motivations that we're finding. And so I'll have more, but it won't be for another couple of months that we'll have, a true idea of what's going on here. But it's something that our I&E chief over here, Jane Gustafson, and I are heavily involved with. We're working with a contractor called Strategic Market and Research Institute, I don't know, Inc., SMARI we call them, out of Indiana. So they also did the motivation segmentation for RBFS, so if they sound familiar to anybody. Anyway, I'll be happy to give more information on it once I have more.
That sounds awesome. I'd love to hear more about that whenever you're ready for public consumption of that.
And Lauren, what about? Go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to ask about the availability of the stuff that you presented today, Lauren. Is there a report from this, or is this slide presentation available, or?
Yeah, Game and Fish sells it for $49.99, At our web? No, I'm just kidding. I can send it to you.
And how did you collect the data?
Let's see. This one was a random digit dial with a. I think we went with a 3% margin of error, and we included all Arizonans 18 and over.
Lauren, so the price point information that you presented for the different recreation types, be able to cross-reference that with the different wildlife watching groups that you presented in earlier slides to see how much those additional groups are willing to pay for those experiences relative to each other?
Yeah. In fact, what we've done is we have broken up each one of those segments, and for every sphere that you see there's actually 4 spheres within those, and that gets very messy to present in this style of format. But yeah, that's a very astute observation. The dedicated folks are far more willing to pay those top dollar prices for some of those activities. And you know, the folks that are the more distanced, it doesn't matter if we throw our best material at them, they're still not going to be interested in there. But if you're interested in that kind of information, that is in the full study, and so if you're interested in that, we can forward that on to you.
If your survey was based on phone calls and knowing the population of Arizona, were you able to pull out people that weren't able to physically do outdoor activities? I'm guessing you've got a lot of retirees down there, and people are going to be home at certain times of the day answering the phone, or even have landlines would be retirees. So were you able to pull out that segment, figure out how many people were kind of non-users, I guess you would say? Because your numbers seem to be pretty high on people that are not interested in hunting or a lot of those activities at all. And I'm wondering if they're just retirees that just aren't physically capable of doing that. Were you able to sort them out by age or anything?
You know, we have not looked at that, but being low on hunting, those are actual numbers of people who are either non-participants or just frankly not interested. Those types of data have been confirmed in several other studies that we've seen. We just are seeing a significant drop in hunting, both here in Arizona and nationwide. Is there anybody else who sees this as maybe a potential application to other groups? I love those ideas so far.
Are we doing that with the elk? The elk survey? Are we doing that? This is Michelle in Idaho. We've done it with anglers. And I actually think we do it every 5 years. We don't have any fish people in the room. But what I'm not sure is how we integrate that into the management. I just don't know. And then I think we're doing that with our elk hunter survey right now. Are we doing typologies on them? We've done that before. But we carve the pie real thin, sliced. You know, we're going not just for hunters, but elk hunters. And
elk archery hunters.
Elk archery hunters.
Elk archery backcountry hunters.
Yeah, we make really thin slices of pie. So.
This is Bruce in Idaho. We're about to send out a survey, and we ask a couple of questions. Would you pay more for this kind of elk hunting than this other kind, or would you rather do this every year or do this better thing every 5 years? So a few questions like that.
Yeah, this is Bill in Alaska, and I guess Michelle raises a good point. I think one of the challenges is getting our agencies and our leadership staff to kind of take the next step with this kind of information, and that's kind of what I've struggled with. We've done some angler segmentation studies in the past and looked at latent demand type and done a few latent demand type studies related, but the challenge has been is coming up with the implementation part of it. And what are we going to do differently to take advantage of this information? And I think that theme has pervaded the human dimensions area for a while, but I'd like to see more discussion around that aspect of these incredibly rich studies that you're doing, Lauren, because a lot of states are starting to see the benefit, but I think we're challenged is in how do we take the next step with this information.
It might be a benefit to share it with like the ACI people that are often designing communications and outreach with our constituents, and I think they would find this stuff very interesting. That was what I was thinking about, was our non-game person here on staff in our I&E division who is kind of floundering, not really sure who to talk to, what the audience is, what to say, and some of this is pretty interesting, and I think she'd enjoy it.
Okay. Yeah, I gotta say, Bill, I think you hit it right on that. Some of these studies are pretty cool, but the actual implementation of them becomes a little bit difficult. I saw that you came in a little bit late. I don't know if you saw that when I was talking about getting fishing opportunities within 30 minutes of every Arizonan.
Mm-hmm.
Were you able to be on for that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's one minor way that we are moving forward with this here in Arizona. Whether or not that actually gets implemented or not, or whether it's possible to implement that or not, probably remains to be seen. But I think you're right. I think actually moving these in that direction and changing decisions on the ground is pretty difficult. But they do allow for a very strong targeted marketing and being able to hit on the points that really push people's buttons in the right way.
Yeah, no, I agree. One thing I was intrigued about, you mentioned the geospatial component, and from the angler segmentation studies we've done, one of the challenges we've found is that we did a little, kind of preliminary look at the types of anglers that go to a particular water body, and the challenge we found is that individuals or different cluster segments are using the same water body to achieve different benefits, and it's hard to sometimes to manage those water bodies to meet the range, and you have to kind of identify who's using it most and for what purposes, and can you manage for one of those groups or two of those groups? How do you do that? It gets pretty interesting.
Yeah. In fact, we're running into that problem with a few of our lakes where folks want a really nice northern pike fishing, and other people want really nice trout fishing there. And as you know, those two things aren't all that compatible.
No. So that just is kind of another example of the challenge of taking the next step, is that you have to engage those publics in a process that may, instead of letting people kind of self-sort, you may be managing more specifically for certain outcomes or or benefits that will push people to a different area.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good point.
Hey, Lauren, how is Arizona moving forward with, the notion of charging $11 for the opportunity to trap deer? Are you headed in that direction, or do you already do that kind of stuff?
It's interesting you ask. Earlier this week, our legislature just passed a bill that actually allows us to sell products and services other than those that are specifically mandated. And so now we can sell hats and shirts and coffee mugs. And once that goes into play and things settle down from that a little bit, I actually think that is the next step of being able to charge for some of those activities that we do. Ideally, what we'd like to do is, instead of being the retailer of wildlife viewing experiences, we'd like to see the model become more where we're the wholesaler, and other groups begin to take the retailer role, and we just facilitate or help out where we can, things like that. And that way, you know, some of that money goes to the groups that are actually holding it, and a portion of that revenue comes to us. That seems to be kind of our intentions right now. But as you well know, getting wildlife viewers to pay into state agency funds is very difficult. They just won't let us put turnstiles on those wildlife viewing opportunities, and it's very difficult to charge for those activities.
Yeah. Yeah, in Idaho, we've put together field trips, biology field trips. I mean, and they range from going on an enforcement, with enforcement officers on a jet boat in the Salmon River, to trapping deer, to, I mean, we're even adding like wolf pups and stuff like that. And we've auctioned those off, or I could say we haven't, but our foundation has auctioned those off. And those go for some good dollars, but I don't know if we've, of course they're not doing it now. They're not doing it anymore. They kind of gave up on that for some reason, but there was the director?
New director of the
foundation. Yeah. So anyway, we do that sometimes, and we've sort of given them away as kind of in lieu of payment for other things, but it seems like there's a lot of potential there, just a special occasion fundraising. But
maybe another opportunity that we talked to, I can't remember the fellow's name, but the construct is that, you know, there's people on the web who want to provide information to folks that might include.
Oops.
That.
Can you hear Greg in Idaho?
Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. So so folks, you know, as many of these internet companies or machines, the opportunity are how to help people facilitate to what the experiences or the things they want, whether it's travel or, in this case, wildlife viewing, wildlife sorts of experiences. And so in some cases, they would put together internet pages, and you get in some sort of subscription basis for enrolling and being, you know, this is based on your own interest. You would become a member of this club or this page, and then as a result of that, you would get information related to, well, I'm a bird watcher, so what is going on, where, why, and how. And that's provided through this web page to you individually, personally, sort of attributed to your interests and needs. But as part of that, what would be important would be the Fish and Wildlife agencies, the state Fish and Wildlife agencies, pushing the information into that page to help supply that information if it's most appropriate. And so as a result of that, the potential interface is these companies who are constructing such a thing and building such a context, then the agencies might get a share of their profits or you know, money by being able to push the information related to, for example, as you put up here, wildlife viewing opportunities in Arizona or whichever state that might be. So there's some of the perhaps innovative opportunities in a information transfer context that might help with funding in a sort of private-public partnership context.
Right, right. Well, yeah, each state, I think, has taken a quick run at finding a mechanism to be able to capture some revenue from this ever-growing group. I think whichever state figures out how to do it and do it efficiently wins.
No, actually they'll lose, because if you try to do it independently, you're dead.
That's true. That's a good point.
We have to do it together or we're dead. That's the worst thing. That's been the problem of our this state-by-state approach is something that we have to subvert because, yeah.
That's a good point. I agree with you. That's part of the reason why we've got 12 states going here right now. Hopefully sharing ideas and figuring it out. Before we come to a close, though, I did want to give a brief invite to everybody to the next webinar that we're doing on June 6th at 11 Mountain Standard Time. And what we're going to be discussing there is we know we have different people from different backgrounds, and the way that people assign valuations to wildlife is very, very different. And the study that we're going to be talking about there kind of integrates why those different kinds of valuation are important to us, and frankly why agencies should care about that kind of thing. But I did want to give you all a personal invite to that next webinar. But I also wanted to end with an opportunity if you all have any ideas that you'd like to see being discussed in some of these webinars. We'd love to hear them, and we'd love to see what we can't do to meet your needs.
What's your idea?
That's it.
That's
Well, Lauren, to add to that conversation, I think the potential of the opportunity of a sort of profit-sharing mechanism with some of these new web or information transfer ideas is something that multiple states, I think, would be good to discuss.
Okay. Anything else?
Just an idea.
I'm certainly intrigued to hear if states are going down that path, or if there are companies that are pushing that forward. I'd be curious to see a little bit more in detail about that model. I don't know if you have suggestions, from specific states or companies that are doing that, but I'd be interested in that.
Okay. Anything else from anybody else? Okay, well, hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and open that up. If you'd like to send in ideas, go ahead and send them in to me or OWP, or send them out to our listserv, which we're going to be able to communicate once again state to state. But if there aren't any more comments, I need to go ahead and end it and do another meeting. So. Thank you very much for attending and for your comments. I very much appreciate your time. Anything else?
Just thanks, Lauren, for putting it together.
Thank you.
That's my pleasure. These are good conversations. I very much enjoy them. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
You too, Lauren.
Bye.
Bye-bye.